All right. Thanks so much for joining me today, Patrick. I'm excited to have you on.
Yeah, it's good to be here. Congrats on creating this and launching it. So it's a awesome next step and chapter.
Yes, yes. And you and I have been talking a little bit already about the self-doubt, imposter syndrome stuff. And this is definitely an area where I'm like, there's enough podcasts for therapists out there. What unique thing do I have to offer and say? But then I was like, fuck it. I'm just going to have some fun with it at some point.
Yeah, I like that perspective. I think that we can always get in our heads with that mentality about anything. And I think that there's room and enough for all of us, but I think it's all about individuality makes a huge difference. Like people could listen to your podcast and hate mine. They could love mine, dislike it. It just doesn't really matter at the end of the day. There's enough people listening to podcasts.
100%.
Hopefully they like both. That's the goal, right?
Hopefully they like both. We've got some overlap in friends in the space, so hopefully.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But I think that is something that drew me to you initially, is that you did stand out from a lot of the kind of just like fluffy stuff that was out there. People who are just, all about like, you can do this and all of this is great. And your stuff was one of the first spaces where I heard like, this shit is also hard. And there are also going to be a lot of barriers and hard things about it. And that doesn't mean you do it anyway. You find the way to make it yours. And I think that has been a really unique voice, and honestly, in some ways still is.
Thanks. Yeah. I mean, I was just finding my way, and I think just naturally being myself. I know that for a very long time, I kept myself playing very, very small in most spaces. And I still remember this like vividly. Right before COVID and the pandemic started, I had lunch with a mentor from grad school. And I was kind of telling her, I was like, I'm really not enjoying being a therapist that much anymore. I really want to start private practice coaching, but Allison's here and she has abundance practice. Like, why would anyone reach out and hire me if they could hire her? She's got a massive audience. She's been around forever. And my mentor was just like, because you have very different personalities. And that is the reality. Like, people are going to gravitate because of how you show up, and vice versa. Like, so that always stuck. My brain hurts. That always stuck with me and was kind of the catalyst that I needed to finally just put stuff out into the world, because I was doing it already. I was doing it for like lunch and coffee and for free. And you might see my Shih Tzu make an appearance. He is asleep. It is 41 degrees here in Nashville, and it is miserable. So yeah, that just always stood with me, and I still am very grateful for that person and that conversation in that time of my life.
Yeah, I think it continues almost to surprise me when I get feedback around like, oh, I just really like your style and I really like what you have to say. And there is still a part of me that goes like, am I saying something different? And I know that I am. I know that there's a lot of ways that I very intentionally put more of my experience, my personality, my ways of thinking into how I talk about things. But to me, it feels normal because I'm just talking about what I believe in. But for people who are hearing messages that are too like fluffy or just believe in yourself and anything's possible, people who are
wait.
maybe
whose voice is that, by the way? Like, is that how you hear those messages? Like, it comes up in that way? Okay.
That's a great question. Yeah, because I'm sure those messages are actually out there, and I'm sure that's also how I hear it. If I just hear anyone can do this, it's simple, then I'm like, that triggers all of my high achieving shit around like, well, if it's not actually simple for me, am I doing something wrong? And so then I shy away from it. So I've played small a lot in my life. So whether those people are actually as optimistic and fluffy as I perceive them to be, who knows? But
I just didn't realize that in your head, these optimistic, fluffy people sound like a version of Mickey Mouse or something. But yeah, no, I agree. And, I think that's a thing, right? Is that when we're talking about branding, when we're talking about standing out, when we're talking about developing anything, and when you start to take up space on social media or in general, you're going to be open for criticism. I mean, listen, y'all, I can't tell you the amount of emails I get that tell me they hate how much I curse, but are so thankful for the resource. And I'm always confused by that. It's perplexing. Or like, we'll go on to leave a review for the Divergent Conversations podcast that I co-host and says things like, great, invaluable resource, so affirming. Patrick's voice is terrible. And it's like, Jesus Christ. So, you have to unfortunately develop some sort of, I don't want to say thicker skin, but there's got to be some callousness to it, because honestly, the more you show up, the more you create, the more you are visible, the more likely it is that people are going to want to tear you down. And we live in an era of social media trolling and just being really disrespectful and just rude. And you just kind of have to glance over it.
Yeah, I remember hearing, I don't remember which happened first, but in your Italy summit, was that last year? 2 years ago? 2 years ago at this point, because it's 2024. When there was a presentation on social media and like the virality, is that how you would say that word? Whatever. Going viral a lot of times depends on like negative engagement. And so I've gotten a few posts where I talk about what I charge as a therapist, what I make as a therapist, and I do get a lot of negative engagement from that. And the very first time it happened, I did not want to post on social media for like a week.
For sure.
I wanted to hide because I was like, clearly I've done something wrong and I'm a horrible person, so I'm just not going to do this anymore. And that was really hard to work through and overcome. And I did a lot of that with my therapy and with my business coaching, because it's not fun to be the center of that type of attention, and especially when I'm generally not a person who likes to be the center of attention.
Yeah, it's hard. I think you have to figure out a way where there's this paradox for a lot of us who are neurodivergent, particularly those of us who might be either autistic, or ADHD, ADHD, where we don't enjoy being perceived. But then the other side of the coin with creating any sort of online brand and business is that you have to be perceived in order to establish presence and reputability. And it's a really big mindfuck. And I honestly hate it. And the bigger my audience has grown, the more reclusive I have become. And it's really overwhelming. I don't enjoy it. I often talk about the fantasy of, God, if I could just be in a situation financially where I could get off the grid permanently, never have to open an app ever again, never have to post, never have to create reels, never have to do any of it, and just live and not, it would be the best existence of all time.
Yes. And even that to say too is like, whenever I come across your reels, like they do literally stop me from the scroll because it is so different. Like you just kind of pop on and you just like say whatever's on your mind. You're just like showing off your office and your toys. Like you do have a different presence again, right? And it's that authenticity instead of this very fluffy edited version that is, more, I don't know, just like more done up. And again, that's different.
What's funny about that is like, I really struggle with content creation, not written form, because I love writing and I love like the cathartic experience of it. But making video content is really hard for me because I can't fake it and I can't like do the traditional natural like social media hooks, and I can't do any of those things. It just does not come naturally to me. And oftentimes when I'm recording video content, because I'm autistic, I will add way too much context. And I'm like, how do I keep this to 60 seconds or 90 seconds when it really needs to be 4 minutes? And, when I have a social media team in place, they're always like, dude, follow the scripts we're giving you. I'm like, I can't do that. I can't. I'm sure the videos would do so much better if I could do those things, and I just can't do it.
Yep. No, it's very, very hard to just not continue to add things because they're kind of like we're talking about too, when it comes to business and just like how you handle it, there's a lot of context that does need to be shared, a lot of context that can't fit into 60 to 90-second reels. And so it's also, again, inauthentic, and it misses a lot of the human experience of running a business to just give these very short highlights of here's how this works or how I did this thing.
Yeah, it's the bane of my existence, honestly. And like, we'll have people sometimes pop into like reels of the podcasts and say, "Oh, how dare you not talk about A, B, and C?" And no, you didn't explain this thoroughly. And it's like, y'all, this was 60 seconds. There's a 60-minute episode on this. Did you go and listen to it? And the answer is
No,
always like, no, of course not.
of course not. Not when I
Okay.
watch the little reel.
Yeah, it's obnoxious. I think that the parasocial nature of our society is overwhelming. And the reality, as someone who has been consistently creating content now for almost 5.5 years, means that a lot of people think they know me way more than I know them, if I know them at all. And they believe that we have an established relationship to some degree, and they will get upset if I say the wrong thing, if I don't respond to a message, if I'm not interested in collaborate. Like, and I'm like, y'all, I don't even know who you are, right? Like, so ultimately, it's really, it's a complicated thing. And Dr. Megan Anna Neff and I talk about this on Divergent Conversations all the time as two ADHD content creators and people in that space. We just want to be left alone, but our businesses rely on the opposite. And it is so hard.
Yes. Yes. I actually really appreciate it. I think you must have gotten like an appointment reminder for this podcast episode, and I got your auto response, which is just like so wonderfully stated of just like, look, I'm practicing digital boundaries. Like, I can't respond
Yeah.
to everything. I'm not going to respond soon to things. And I think especially for those of us who are more present and appear to be more active on social media, that is what people expect from us of like, I'm going to email you and get a response, or you're going to be available all the time. And that's just not possible, especially when you and I work as hard as we do, and combined with, different neurotypes and how we just need to turn off sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. And admittedly, I hate to say this, that I still respond to all the emails. It's just, it creates like this buffer of like,
Sure.
if I don't, then it's going to be more okay. But
Sure.
that's a problem. That's my own problem. I think that, even going further than that, I can't remember at this point how many of my events you've come to, but it's got to be at least 5 or 6.
At
And
least.
I think that those events can be weird for me as well, right? Because people are paying a good amount of money to come on these events and spend time and connect and all of the things that I try to build in. But I do think sometimes people pay for access, and then it means like I feel guilty, or like I'm not around enough, or I'm not available enough, or and I just keep thinking like, damn, this is really hard because I don't have the energy to do that. I don't have the capacity to like be social throughout the entire experience. I have to remove myself. And there's definitely guilt that comes up, acknowledging like people just spent a lot of money to travel across the world to come here. And, I actually just had an experience in September. We co-hosted, my friend Jennifer and I co-hosted back-to-back retreats in Greece, followed by Spain. And I got sick on the plane ride to Spain, got sicker the next day, and then realized very quickly I was not going to be able to be in that event at all. And it felt so shitty to think like people may have been waiting an entire year to come on this experience, and I am not even going to be a part of it. And I just try to model like, hey, y'all, this is what's happening. You're in good hands. Like, Jen's got you. The coaches that we've hired have got you, and I'm going back to the United States. Like, I've got to go home and take care of myself. And a lot of people were actually very appreciative of modeling it that way, but it doesn't mean I felt any less guilty making that decision.
Yeah. Because again, there's lots of ways. I think therapists generally, and then all of us with our individual histories, like we're all kind of conditioned to be on and to give and to talk about boundaries, but not actually enforce them. And especially when you're in the business with retreats, especially like you're just talking about, like people are charging money, or you're charging money, people are giving money. It feels like that's even more expected for you to show up in that way and not have boundaries, maybe because it's costing people, quote unquote, to do
Yeah,
that. But
exactly.
100%, like if you're not going to show up in the way that you actually can and want to, like there's a cost to that too.
Majorly, for sure. And I did that for far too long. And that's often why I find myself in the burnout phases of my life that I do, because I've just pushed myself so far beyond my limits over the last 5 years, and now have to almost like rearrange and recreate my entire life professionally and personally, because my body continues to tell me like, yeah, this doesn't work for me anymore. We're not letting you do this anymore. And it's like, it's really harrowing to come to grips with that reality of terms of limitations and capacity and ability.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, I know I've told you this before, but it's been a lot of your content on like ADHD struggles where I'm like, huh, a lot of this really resonates. I'm curious if I should get tested. And you're like, oh, well, you definitely are. But yes, if you want to get tested, go ahead and do that. But
Mm,
I think, again, just for it to be so direct in my face, like that was really a wake up call that I needed around this difference between, you know, growing up and going to gifted programs and being a part of college prep schools. Like I'm a very perfectionistic high achiever. I don't even know if I could say I'm recovering. Like maybe I'm working on it. I'm aware of it. But I think it is hard to work on letting it go, honestly, when you know how far it can take you, but when
yeah,
you also know what it's costing you
yeah,
health wise and happiness wise. Like I think the ableist mindset of what we should be able to do so gets in the way of so many therapists that I've talked with, because it does feel like I'm supposed to be able to do it this way and I'm supposed to be able to do it this quickly. But a lot of people are even burning themselves into the ground, not just with therapy, but even trying to diversify their revenue streams.
yeah, yeah, 100%. So it's, I think we have to kind of step back sometimes and think about, are these things still serving us, the things that we're aiming to do or create, if we're looking to grow our outside of the therapy space or one-on-one therapy, and really do an inventory on a pretty consistent basis of what's serving me, what's like energizing, what is draining me. Are there things that are energizing and draining simultaneously, and how do I prioritize those things in my life? um, how do I set better boundaries in terms of my time and my energy, my capacity? It's wild. Like if I look back at when I started all things private practice back in August of 2020 till now, I think back then, like my schedule was full of like collaboration and networking and podcasting and coaching. And it was just jam packed with all this stuff. And it felt new and it did feel exciting. And it also was so exhausting. And it caught up with me big time. But ultimately, I don't know if I have the success that I've had without all of that. And yeah, I think it's weird to reckon with in terms of existential pivot points in our careers.
Mhm. Because I think a lot of us, like, and I'll put myself in the mix too, like, it's easy to always be looking forward and to feel like if we're not doing something, like we're failing or
Yeah.
we're doing it wrong. If we're not always growing year to year, like we're not doing what we should be. And
Right.
there's not, I think, as many points or even like encouragements to slow down and think about that. Like, is this actually still working? Like, we're doing just to do. Whereas, like, I've met with people and I've had my own experiences where, sure, like I'm making great money this month, but I'm also working way more than I would want to be. And actually, when I think about it, I'm not running this program in the way I wanted to. I just did it the way I was taught to. So, a lot of us, as much of reflective and introspective people as we tend to be, like, for some reason it feels like when it comes to business we lose that connection of like, well, business is different than life. Like we don't introspect and do the whole working on the business thing. We just keep working in it and in it and in it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. And yeah, I think for all of you listening, you should be taking these moments to kind of take a look at what you've done, what you're working towards, what you want to achieve, but also to think about what things are serving you, what things you want less of in your life, and to really just prioritize in terms of life is really short. Um, we really are not trying to just work and work and work and not get to enjoy all of the fruits of our labor, so to speak, because I'm getting ready to host retreat number 21 and then 22 in New Zealand in a month. And that is exciting. But 21 and 22 over a 4-year period of time catches up with you. And I think that it just is important to think like, if you're always burnt out, if you're always sick, if you're always depleted, was this all worth it? And sometimes the answer is absolutely yes. And sometimes the answer is absolutely no. And I try to see all of it because I don't want to ever sound ungrateful for all of the things that I've been able to do and accomplish and the successes and people like yourself putting trust in things. But at the same time, it's just this like reckoning with yourself of like, this is just no longer working. And we're really going to have to prioritize like health and recovery going forward.
Yeah. Which I think too comes back to this. When I had heard you say it was going to be your last set of retreats, like there's absolutely a part of me that's like, no, Patrick puts on awesome retreats. And now what am I going to do? Because what it comes back to for me is the level of trust I've developed in you to like run a really good retreat and to feel comfortable at them and to feel like I'm going to be able to connect with really cool people and leave with really good ideas, and also know that it's fine when I don't want to come to some talks. And so for me, it's like, now who else can I trust to have like similar spaces? And obviously you and Jen have similar styles. You and Gabrielle are doing lots of things together. So I know I have people to trust, but I think that does come back to this trust piece, even in the coaching and retreat space. Like there are a lot of people that are doing it. And I think those who are relying more on like AI or just kind of sounding the same as everyone else, like I don't know that people are going to be able to develop those kind of trusting relationships to say things I've said to you multiple times, like just take my money. Like, yep, okay, I'm just giving you more money.
Yeah. And listen, I certainly appreciate that. And that means a lot. But I almost sometimes want to cut some of y'all off from these experiences. I launch something and I see a name come through. I'm like, oh, I always feel so guilty. I'm like, this shit is expensive. But I also understand that it's transformative. And that's kind of what you talk a lot about in terms of your intensives and charging what you charge and all the things that you talk about, right? Like, can we put a price on transformation? Can we put a price on complete life altering experience? And the answer is probably no. And I think that I've always tried to stay grounded in that of like, people are spending a lot of money. So you do have to deliver, which is pressure filled, but that's fine. But in reality of like, should I feel guilty about this? And sometimes I do. Like if I see your name come up or Xander's name come up for the 11th time, I'm like, I am going to block your credit card, Xander. Like I'm but I think it's important to acknowledge too, right? Like we are looking for community and we're looking to surround ourselves with like-minded people in terms of both personal and professional. And a lot of these events, I am really eternally grateful that so many people have come on them over the years, but have become friends and then have become friends with each other. And I love, like, I'm not an extroverted person, and that might sound weird as a host of retreats and summits, but I would prefer to stand in the background and like witness people experiencing and connecting and enjoying. And that is what like has been really fulfilling for me. And that for me has always been like the priority since day one. And even my first Ireland retreat back in March of 22, I just remember like standing in the wine cellar area while we had music going on, and I was watching people like dancing and singing and just being so uninhibited in terms of being so like carefree and joy filled. And then so many of those people became friends with each other and started traveling the world and building businesses. And I was like, damn, this feels like a massive amount of impact and ripple effect, and I didn't even have to like insert myself into that dynamic. So it was really really nice to see that stuff come to fruition.
Yeah. I mean, I think again, the people that you speak to and the kind of space that you create, like it's what a lot of us are looking for, which is again just like freedom to be yourself, freedom to do whatever you want, take care of yourself, but also like when it comes to the business aspect, because that's both in life and business what I just said, but the business aspect is this aspect of taking risks, like even to take risks to travel somewhere, to take risks of hearing an idea from one of the speakers and work on implementing it. And I think that's a lot of the people I have made friends with at your retreats are the people who think like me and honestly like do life and business like me. And so that's been really fun to connect with a lot of those people. And just continue to have relationships in spaces where it does feel like these people get me, these people will support me with no matter like what I do and how I want to do it, and I get to do the same back, because whether someone's in solo practice or group practice, I think there are still so many of us who feel disconnected, not even just from therapists, but especially from people who are entrepreneurial and who want to do more. It still feels very, the virtual space is just, it feels huge. So when we get to connect in person, it's a whole different experience.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, well said. And I think there's so many cool things out there. And one thing I would recommend for everyone is like, if you're going to sign up for any coaching program, service, or retreat, or event, or anything, I steer clear of the people who are like guaranteeing results and guaranteeing outcomes all the time, because, or at least without talking about how hard it's going to be to create the thing or successfully do the thing. So I always try to look for that ability to hold both sides of it and to have that nuance and complexity. And I think a lot of people opt more for like that cheerleading positive psychology um, methodology, and that just doesn't work for me. So it's just important to like you attract and repel based on how you show up and what you put out into the world. And I think it's important to just pay attention to that.
Yeah. Yeah. And so for me, I want to bring it back to number one, you do a million different things, usually at once. You're currently writing a book, you've done all these amazing things. And so both you're talking about this aspect of watching your capacity and also paying attention to what you even like doing. But you started this phrase that when I heard it was like, it seems so simple, but wow, just to hear it put so simply, it can be life changing, but doubt yourself, do it anyway. Is there a story behind that? And how does that show up in all the things you have done over the years?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's like a story of origin. It was really more like just struggling so much throughout most of my life, and even now, of like imposter syndrome, perfectionism, self-doubt, everything I've done, and second guessing, and holding myself back, and then just starting to realize that by doing things with imperfect action and like putting them into the world and seeing that the energy kind of follows, and it can be really um, a catalyst in a lot of ways when you're starting to move in the world like that. And then to recognize like that it's okay for the fear to be there, and it's okay for the doubt to be there. But what you don't want it to do is prevent you from pursuing the things that you are feeling inspired by or creative or motivated by, or have these aspirations of like, we have to just try, right? Like we just have to try, and we can't do that if we don't put it into the world. So I just started saying the phrase. I don't know even where it came from really, and I'm sure other people have said it before. And then I've trademarked it because I was like, but I don't give a shit. I mean, I've never done something that matters to me, but like I just realized that it had become kind of foundational. And even with the summits that I've hosted and a lot of the events that I've done, that has kind of become not only the slogan and catchphrase, but just like the core concept of we are all operating from these places and ideas of like maybe it's a core belief, maybe it's inner child wounding, or maybe it's just something you've heard recently. Maybe it's some harsh self-criticism of telling yourself you're not good enough, you don't know how, you're not competent, you don't deserve to do this. Why would anyone do you even have anything meaningful to say? All of those things that are so painful that we all kind of have our own version of that. Where it came from, it's different for everybody. But the reality is that if we are all moving towards the things that feel really scary and putting them into the world, regardless of that fear, the world does not stop spinning. Um, and it feels a lot less pressure filled once you get it out of your head. Um, and that's really been so meaningful for me, but I know it's been really helpful for a lot of other people as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I think it is. Like, I don't know a single therapist who isn't like an overachiever and who doesn't want to, get A pluses on everything. Like, we tend to all be people who are lifelong learners and want to do things really, really well. And I
Right.
think that shows up in everything we do, even with you and I are talking a little bit about like the diverse streams of income, but even within therapy, and as I talk with people about therapy intensives, so many people get into their head around, well, I'm supposed to be an even better therapist. I need more credentials to do that. There has to be
Yeah.
this amazing transformation I'm guaranteeing because of what I might charge for these. And at the end of the day, what I continue to tell people is like, you're just doing the same thing you already do. Some of the messaging and marketing maybe looks a little bit different, but I found when I moved from doing 40 to 60-minute sessions to doing 3 hours, I'm like, I actually feel like a better therapist. And it's not because I got more training, it's because I stopped working against the restrictions of the clock. I
Right.
stopped trying to distill interventions in this tiny time. And I'm like, if that's all I needed to feel like a more confident therapist, why didn't I do this forever ago? But there's just so many things where we feel like we have to wait until X in order to do something. And that finish line will just continue to push itself further and further. And so, to your point of just like, it can be imperfect. And actually, that's totally fine. And you're not going to die and the world's not going to stop spinning. Like, I think the more that all of us can embrace some of that, I think it also would become less scary to just take big and little risks.
Yeah, absolutely. Really well said. And I think that the more we normalize the fact that it is scary, that it is overwhelming, that people have fear of failure, people do fail. You are going to mess up, you're going to make mistakes, you're going to walk it back sometimes, you're going to and I think this is all a part of life. And I don't love shying away from that part of it in terms of business or personal. And I just think that it's so important to normalize both sides because that's where the shame comes from of like the feeling of I'm the one who can't do this. I'm the one who doesn't have enough to offer. There's something wrong with me. How is everyone else so successful all the time? And if we just talked more about that part of it, it would be collectively a lot less overwhelming and would probably allow for a lot more people to take action on the things that they feel really inspired by.
Yeah. Yeah. I started doing these exercise classes called Solid Core. They're like, don't call them Pilates. They'll be offended if you call them Pilates, but it's kind of like Pilates, where they have these motivational sayings on the wall and on the floor. And one of them is finding failure is success. And a whole part of their exercise mentality is like, you're supposed to work your muscles to the point of failure. Like, that's how they get stronger. And I
Right.
think the more that I've also done that, like, obviously that's a personal thing I'm doing in my life, but that continues to carry over into my business as well of like, okay, if I did try something and it failed, I still learned something from that. Whether it's, it literally wasn't the right time to do it, or I didn't have the capacity to do that well, or maybe no one does want that offer, and that's fine because that is still success in teaching me, like, focus on this, not on that. And so I think
Absolutely.
failure is okay. Failure is success in some ways when we choose to see it that way.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a data point and it just allows us to learn from and grow and pivot and evolve. And I think that's an important part of being a small business owner is not everything you're going to do is going to go well. And sometimes it's going to be really messy, and sometimes it's going to be very overwhelming. Sometimes it's going to flop. And those are the moments where I've learned the most. It's not when things go really well, where I'm like stepping away with aha moments or epiphanies. It's like I need to have these things happen in order to be like, oh, got to learn from that, or got to grow from that. Never going to do that again. So that stuff is really important.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate everything that you're saying today as things that you say always as well. Like I said, I'm going to make you uncomfortable and fangirl over you because like literally like all the ways that you show up in your personal life and in business like truly have been transformational for me, for leaning into this doubt yourself, do it anyway, for leaning into making myself hella uncomfortable, for helping me learn more things about myself personally and professionally. So I just want to appreciate you and all the work that you do.
Well, I really appreciate that. And I'm looking forward to being in New Zealand together and spending time on the other side of the world and not here.
Yeah, it's going to be dope because the United States is fucked right now. So I'm looking forward to it. Is there anything else you want to leave the listeners with? Any thoughts, things to consider?
No, I think that's a good summation of everything. I think if you want to experience more of this, you can come to Portland, Maine to the 3rd annual Doubt Yourself, Do It Anyway Summit, September 1st to the 3rd. And otherwise, I think that is it.
Perfect. Anywhere you want people to, as we're talking about social media, anywhere you want people to follow you most or engage with your content?
So you can go to allthingspractice.com for my website offerings, podcasts, upcoming events, anything else I've got, free resources, trainings, workbooks, etc. Someone else bought allthingsprivatepractice.com, which is a bummer. And then I have the All Things Private Practice podcast, which you've been a guest on, and that's on all the platforms and YouTube. And you can go to my Instagram, which is probably where I'm the most active these days, and that's just patrick.casale.
Cool. Thanks so much for your time today, Patrick. I will see you in New Zealand.
Looking forward to it.